Okay, hey
Got it.
everybody. So today with me, I have Tony Stubblebine. He is the second CEO of Medium's history. He has an extensive background in Silicon Valley, spending a year as vice president of engineering at Odeo, the company that would later evolve into Twitter. For any of you that didn't know, I didn't know, me, including me.
Yeah.
He also pursues mountain biking, hiking, and is a productivity coach who beta tested Medium in its earliest days. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tony Stubblebine.
Hey, all right. I love that intro. Glad to be here. Well, I mean, from my perspective, it's a chance to talk to one of the great authors on our platform. So looking forward to it.
Thanks, I really do appreciate that. So
Yeah.
I wanted to start off with a serious question. I was looking on your Instagram and I saw vinyl. Yeah, I saw vinyl records, and you said something pretty interesting about vinyl that it's more of intentional listening, and Spotify is mindless listening. So I was curious if being a productivity guy, like, do you still listen to vinyl? What are you listening to, and how's that affected your life?
Sure. The being a productivity guy, the background there is that I had been an entrepreneur for a long time, and so of course that forces you to reevaluate you know, uh, your own relationship with productivity. But then the last company I did before I joined Medium was a self-improvement company that got deep into coaching and productivity coaching, big part of it. And so that's how I got involved in that world. And you start to hit all these sort of philosophical questions. It's not just about the tactics or the systems. And
Mhm.
one of the main ones that I got to is, are we trying to be too productive? Like, there's so many times where we're trying to get so much done that we're, I think, missing the quality of life. And so my head was really in the direction of, where should we live more slowly? And so if you think of kind of the normal life, it's like, well, I'm doing the dishes, but what am I listening to while I do the dishes? Right. And it's not intentional on either way. And so kind of related to that is the idea of single tasking. What does it take to be fully present in the thing, whatever it is that you're doing the dishes or listening to music? And yeah, vinyl is a great example of, you're not going to be skipping around. You're going to listen to the music in the order that it is on the record. And there's something intentional about, it's physically a little bit of a task to pull the record out, get it onto the turntable. And I think because of those things, I tend to um, listen to a record, uh, listen to a record all the way through. Like, it's like a chance to sit down and just be with the music.
Mm.
Um, yeah. This is a little bit dangerous territory for me though. I'm not really that, like, I come from a music family. My dad is in the music industry, like
Oh, okay.
actually, like, has done a lot probably to master some of the new music that's coming out on vinyl. But but I'm like almost the opposite. I went the opposite direction. Maybe this is my own rebellion. So if you start asking me what's my favorite album, I might get really uncomfortable. But just in terms of process, you're right that I do really like the ritual of sitting down and just doing one thing.
Yeah, that'll stick with me for a long time. You articulated how I feel going through Spotify because now my playlists are just these messes of different genres, and
Yeah,
it's a trash can essentially. And it's not when
sure.
I had vinyl in college, it was like, okay, put this on, listen to this album straight through the way
Yeah,
the person
yeah,
had it intentionalized, and so it's kind of awesome to see
yeah.
you have that perspective.
Right. I don't know if this is a crazy. I mean, we're really like, we could go into some weird things, but I used to challenge people who'd get like halfway to this of like, okay, I'm gonna do things intentionally, and I'd ask them, is it okay to eat popcorn when you watch a movie?
That's interesting because yeah, I've
Because of
heard
course,
things.
right,
Well, I come from a fitness background. I would always read that if you eat while you're watching TV, it just you end up eating more. You're
right.
distracted, so it is an interesting field.
And so how much are you enjoying the food while
Yeah.
you watch TV or watch a movie? Not at all, basically. And then same. is there at some level you're not fully present with the movie or with the TV, and if you can't, if the movie's not good enough to enjoy without popcorn, then maybe you shouldn't even bother watching it. I
Mm.
mean, of course, it's okay to eat popcorn at a movie. I just like I wanted to raise the question. Um,
It's just not okay to eat hamburgers and may do other stuff at the movie. But
um,
yeah, it does get kind of crazy, I think, with the amount of distractions we have to add on to the entertainment
hmm
that's already in front of us.
hmm
Yeah, so it is interesting.
yeah, and we live in a very distracted world, people are disconnected, I think, from value and quality, and very focused on quantity. A very American view on things. More is better.
Mm. But
Except it's not.
it seems like
Yeah,
you've had this philosophy for a very long time. Because I read somewhere when you first got introduced as a CEO of Medium, like, oh, it's one of ours, you know. And I think
yeah,
people didn't really know. I mean, granted, it was cool that you were a writer, but I don't think they really. I didn't really realize your background until even doing a lot of research on you and seeing like, wow, this guy's gone on road trips, van life. He's done a lot of crazy things and brought this. You know, it seems like your philosophy, or at least tried to develop it all in this. And I think a lot of people. It was just interesting to see like, okay, you know, someone has like lived a lot of life experience, and you know, I think a lot of people sometimes are like, oh, hey, you know, me and this guy, and you don't realize what people have done a lot of times in life to like, you know,
sure.
develop their philosophies and get to where they're at.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I think there's some usually this a lot of times the second CEO, the stereotype is they're just some, mercenary business manager type. But I got the job by basically being the world's expert on Medium. Like I'd been in there I'd shared office space when they developed it. Been extremely active from day one. Been an advisor to the company, and then was, I think their biggest external partner. And I think that's what they liked about me. Actually, is that uh, I loved Medium as much as the founder loved Medium. And that's, I think, hard to get. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but then, but then the question is, well, what skill am I bringing? And I think even my team still is like learning that. It comes out every now and then. It's like, oh wait, Tony actually does know how to do that. They wouldn't know. Like why? Uh, when you've been in this industry for 25 years or so, there's yeah, I got a chance to do a lot of different things, and turns out a lot of those things are relevant to helping Medium succeed.
Mm. So I guess
Mm-hmm.
tell me a little bit about your direction with Medium. The thing, what I get from it, from reading a lot of the articles you've posted, which have been very transparent, not opaque at all. And I'm like, okay, but now having some time to mull it over, it seems like you want experts on the platform and making expert content, like content that where you can click on an article and you say, oh, this person knows what they're talking about. They're not winging something. They're not like someone's commentary on Ukraine when we all have commentary on Ukraine. I've been guilty of that. I'm sure many other authors have done things like that too. But I'm just curious, then, you know, expand upon what you mean by just having, you know, more expert opinions on the platform.
Nothing has been more contentious with Medium authors than the word expert, and especially that it is an extremely threatening word to actual experts.
Yeah,
They're like,
yeah.
"Well,
I
how are
know.
you going to
The
decide?" I was
funniest
like,
part, I have no problem with it. I'm like, yeah, that make. I was telling my friend this, and we're like, yeah, that makes sense. That'd be a good platform to have experts
"Right."
on.
Um, my This is to go back into my history. My very first job, not my first job, my second, I guess, big job in tech. I was working for a technical publisher, O'Reilly, and this was in '03, '04, '05, where all the information on how to be a programmer was in books, and it was mostly in O'Reilly books. And it wasn't in Stack Overflow. It wasn't in the internet wasn't nearly as big as it is today. And the way that we um, got the best books on programming out is that we had an expert programmer write them. We didn't have an author or a writer or a content manufacturer write it. We had a great programmer write it, and then we had a programmer edit it, and then we
Mm,
had tech reviewers who were themselves often like the creators of the programming language. And then we had a bug reporting system, actually. So if readers said, hey, this is wrong, we went and we fixed it in between printing. So there's this whole manufacturing process in order to get it right, right? Like, and it's not easy to do. And we never got it all the way right, but we were committed to getting it right. And so then I look at the media landscape here where you have kind of the creator economy that is like, let me just write about anything. Like a lot of the creator economy is let me write about anything. If it's a good angle, great. But they're just mimicking the journalism, which is, you know, even if you were to look at the New York Times, like people think I'm out of my mind for this, but the best writing on Medium is better than the best writing in the New York Times.
Yeah.
Because by definition, a journalist in the New York Times doesn't know what they're talking about. They're researchers. They're going to source material and trying to summarize it for you. But if you could just talk directly to the source material, you'd learn way more and it would be more coherent. And anyone that's ever had an article in the New York Times understands, oh, they didn't get it all the way right. Like
It's like
I don't
Twitter
know, like
in that regard too, a little bit.
yeah. And that's not to say we shouldn't have the New York Times or the New York Times is fake news. It's just it's very, very hard to get it right. And even no one gets it all the way right. And so it's like more being committed to get it right. And so having seen all of that, I always want to hear from people that are closer to whatever they're talking about, as close as possible. Firsthand experience is the best thing in the world from my perspective. And so then when I got here, I did use the word expert, and I always followed it up by saying this thing, by definition, you're an expert in your own experience. And therefore, every author has something they can write about on Medium where they're the expert. Yeah. And that part got lost. No one that never traveled with the message. And so for the most part, I never say that word anymore. Like I will never prompt that word because it's the world's worst messaging for our authors. It really puts them it puts them gives them a real sense of unease. So I tend to talk instead about the bar is going up, like the bar for what we promote, the bar for what we pay for is going up. So how do you reach that bar? Through hard work, right? Better research, better life experience, more edits, more rewrites, right? And if you don't want to reach that bar, we're not asking you to reach the bar. We're like, writing is by definition a healthy activity. Everyone, like, I love to see people write, but then people are also here writing saying, reward me, right? I'm like, well, okay, this is what it's going to take to be rewarded. If you just want to write for yourself, which was all Medium was about before we started paying people at all, I'm not, there's very few things that I feel like shouldn't have been written, but there's a lot of things that I feel like shouldn't have been promoted. And those can be very different.
Yeah, it's funny you say all that because I'm thinking you can be an expert in the lack of expertise you have too. Because I do stand up comedy in New York. A lot of people, it's like, how hard is it to even do this? And it's kind of funny to say, like,
Yeah.
I've been struggling in life, and I've been struggling with this and that, and just to hear that perspective, yeah, you could be an expert even in just something no one would even expect.
Yeah, and you know more about stand-up comedy in New York today than Seinfeld knows, right? It's like he knows about it from when he was an up and comer, right? He's never been at, let's say, Eastville over like.
I love Eastville, yeah.
I'm a couple blocks away, I could run into you there.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I go there all the time. Yeah, it's an awesome place. But that's very interesting. I wonder what it is about that word that makes people a little afraid of it, but I'm not sure.
I had prior experience. I knew it was a little bit gendered, like men are more likely to call themselves experts than women, but it was way beyond that. The backlash to it But there's other ways to say that, obviously we're a communication platform. If if we're if what I'm saying is not getting across, then got to find a different way to communicate it. But basically, we're saying the same thing. Like, we want to promote things that are as right and useful and helpful as possible, and that takes work. And so there's no other way around it. So how did you do that work? Did you do that work because you're already a working professional in that area? Great, that's one way. Another way could be to do a massive amount of research. Um, you know,
Mm.
um, but you know, is that exciting to you? For some people, it's annoying, right? They just want to get their ideas out, be idea generators. But I think for the best medium authors, usually that work pays off for them in multiple ways. Like, we're talking to this one business consultant who does a lot of business writing. I said, how much does it matter that we pay you? And he just laughed at us. He goes, guys, I get $500,000 a year contract off a Medium
Mhm.
every year. Like, I'm here to write the best information I can about business strategy, because that gets in front of potential customers and then they hire me. And like, whether you pay, like, any amount of money you pay me is not going to even come close to that.
Mhm.
So, but I thought that was a really good example of, there's an honorarium for him here and there's a lot of extra traffic, but for the most part, um, he sees an internal reward to, like, writing as a way to research and think, and he has a innate reason to put a lot of work into what he's writing.
Mm.
Um,
So let me
this is a
ask.
hard business to talk about. I like, I know you want to get to the next question, but I'm like, oh shit. If any poet is listening, now they feel like I don't care about poetry. It's just, there's a lot of different communities on Medium and a lot of different reasons for people to write. And it can give you a lot of individual examples, but I'm not meaning to leave anyone out. There's um, kind of the breadth of the platform is the strength of it, but it also makes talking to the community just exceptionally hard.
Mm, that makes sense. I mean, do you think that's because there's so many bloggers nowadays? I mean, I heard you say something along the, and I've said this before, and you articulated again, like what I was thinking. The curator economy. Essentially, there's like so much information nowadays, and what I've been reading
Yeah,
is that blogging, like even I started on Medium on like a wave. I realized like it was like I'm
yeah,
not like Tim Denning, who's been here for since the dinosaur age. But I started on a wave of okay, blogging
yeah,
is becoming a thing again, or it's becoming new and fresh. And I
yeah,
feel like you came in actually during a wave. I think this is a wave now. It's just, and that's why I think a lot of bloggers are maybe insecure and scared, is because there's a lot of bloggers now, and I think I will get into this maybe a little bit later, but I think that's also AI is like maybe complicating the problem too, and people are like,
oh yeah.
is there a way that I'm not going to ever be a writer? So explain maybe the curator economy and just what any new complications you think are maybe with blogging now.
Yeah, the, there's too much information, and there's about to be more. So there's a lot of the creator economy was writing at the level of what AI can write at. So you're fucked. We can say
Yeah.
that on this podcast,
Oh
right?
yeah, of course,
Like,
yeah.
it doesn't matter what we do. Don't yell at me. Like, you just like got put out of business. But I never thought that should have been a business in the first place. It was always obvious that that was sort of crowding out better stories, and this is a factor of kind of the attention economy, which I think was how the creator economy was getting paid. It's like, how can I draw as much attention to myself as possible, as consistently as possible, build an audience, and get paid. Is the attention economy led to recommendation algorithms that were based on attention and engagement, and then we would talk to our readers and our subscribers, and they would say, like I'm not getting value here. I'm getting tricked into reading these articles. They've got a great
Mm,
title, maybe an interesting um, intro, but by the time I get to the bottom, they didn't deliver, right? And so our algorithms are like, wow, a lot of people are clicking on this. A lot of people are reading to the end. Therefore, let's show this to more people. But there was no substance to it, and that shows up in other measurements for us, and it shows up in the satisfaction of the readers. And like the blessing that I was left with, but from the prior CEO is he had chosen a subscription business model. So theoretically, we should be aligned with the reader. Like we
mm-hmm.
have to give them enough value that it's worth paying for, and we shouldn't care at all about attention or engagement. Like that, those are all tricks to get more page views, to put more ads in front of people, and we don't need to do that. Like if I showed a person a single life-changing article once a week, once a month even, that pays for the subscription. I don't need them to click 100 times. I need them to have one great click, right? And so given that there's too much information already, how are we going to find find the great stuff, right? And AI is hard to spot from an algorithmic perspective. Like I think it's starting to swamp SEO results already, so Google's
Yeah.
not really even seeing it. You kind of need someone with taste to look at a piece and say, this is new, this is fresh, this is not just regurgitated, uh, and 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 most importantly is to be able to say this is important. So we had an internal curation team that was really good at saying this is well constructed, like this is a well written article. And so like they're probably the worst at programming articles, that because it's impossible for them to pick. And so I'd get questions, or I'd see questions from them like, this article, Node.js is dead, which is like programming language.
Mm,
Um, it's like really well written and it's spicy. It's like, okay, but somewhere a person, like I think about entrepreneurs who are like trying to get like a product built, and they're thinking, should I build it with this technology? And they find this article. The question is not, is it an entertaining article? The question is it good advice?
mm-hmm.
And there's no way for kind of a generalist curator to do that. And so we rebuilt our whole recommendation algorithm to start taking in the signals of people that are subject matter experts. Now, those are all external to us. And as soon as we do that, people start trying to game the system. So we kept our internal curation team as like the gut check of the signal of like expert curators on the platform. Um, like make sure we help them keep their own standards high. And then our recommendation algorithm is much less important. It's just playing matchmaker. It's not saying what's good or bad. It's saying we already know this is a great article. You like that topic. I'm going to recommend it to you. And that so far has looked very successful to us, and we're just at the beginning of it. But it's not possible um, without activating all the curators we already have on Medium. And that's one of the cool building blocks I knew we had here. It's like we have a lot of people who know what they're talking about, who love to read, who love to curate and promote other people's stuff.
Mm. So it almost seems like the curation system getting more humans behind that instead of
Yeah.
relying so much on the algorithm. I mean, it seems like platforms like YouTube and others are even having to pivot in that direction.
Yeah. I think this is also specific to text. Like, I'm not sure I need a human curating TikTok for me. Like, I'm on TikTok to be entertained.
Hmm.
And if they can tell something is entertaining, it doesn't really matter if it's healthy for me. Like, or if it's right, or if the information's right, not as important. But for the written word, for a lot of what people write and or read here, they do want it to be right. And I don't think there's a way to do that without humans in the loop. And one of the kind of the obvious logical reasons behind it is AI is based on what, right? All this AI we see right now, the source material was humans. And so
Hmm.
without the source material, it's not going to do shit, right? And I think that's the same with journalism. Like journalism is based on what? The source material of experts. So we're trying to elevate that sort of stuff.
That makes sense. It seems like a very complex problem, though. But I mean, maybe it is. You think you guys are hitting it well at the moment?
I think it would be complex for most people. Like I think if you haven't, um, I guess I've seen it look complex to people who think they're just in the business of building software, right?
Okay.
Like I put a tool out, people would buy it, and but I had been in the business of building software, and then I was in the business of editing. And anyone who'd seen both sees that like basically there's only one way to do this, and it's pretty obvious how to put it together. And we're not afraid of having humans in the loop. I think a lot of people are afraid of just fundamentally about having humans in the loop,
Mm,
and especially software technologists are afraid. Like they'll do anything to automate humans out of the process, which is kind of a weird thing to do if you think about it. Like, what are humans going to do then? Right? We're like robbing each other of purpose.
yeah.
And meanwhile, we have a lot of Medium is filled with people with purpose. Why would we take them out of the loop? Why would we automate them, even if we could? And then obviously we can't, so we won't.
Yeah, it reminds me of my favorite writers too. Is you said something along the lines of you can kind of tell, especially when I'm reading any of my favorite writers, like Hunter S. Thompson's one of mine, or even
Yeah,
just Tolkien. I'm rereading Lord of the Rings, and you can
sure,
feel like I always read in. I feel like in their voice, or at least what I think is their voice, and I feel like
sure.
Medium has kind of that. With the content that's not good that we were talking about before, it has that split where you're just like, this is I don't know, but when you connect it with, like even Tim Denning, like I know people, some he becomes a contentious figure of some people, but for me, I like him. I think he's a great writer, and I read his stuff like in the voice that I've only talked to him once, but I read it in the voice I imagine his voice being, and I'm
Hmm.
like, yeah,
Hmm.
okay, Tim, this is Tim writing this, so it's interesting that you say because maybe artificial intelligence isn't there with mimicking a voice that we, or if it does, it has like its own robot weird voice.
Right. Um, I mean, yeah, there's a lot wrong with AI, but it's simultaneously amazing. It's doing so much better than you would think it could do. But then if you're actually trying to use it for practical purposes, it's wrong. It's wrong a lot of the time. And then I think we underestimate how much of reading is about an emotional connection with the author. And so you take the personality out of it. It actually makes it harder to read and definitely less interesting.
Mm, got it. So I only have one more question about Medium. I'd heard you say, or it was written somewhere. You can tell me clear up if it's true or not, but that you wanted to pivot the almost the strategy of Medium every 3 months. It sounded like you were saying it almost like a flippantly, but I was curious.
I was joking.
Yeah, what your like mindset. It does seem like you're compared to EV, like you're very, always moving, very seem especially since you're coming right off, like you're coming right in. So it's like it seems very looking forward for all of it. So, maybe just expand upon that.
We'd been accused of pivoting all the time, and like major media outlets sort of picked this up as a storyline about the company. And there's been a couple places in the history of Medium where they just didn't do anything to counteract a story that they probably didn't agree with internally. And so, like, one of the most common accusations is that we pivot all the time. And first of all, I don't agree with that. I think Medium pivoted 2 times. I think um, we uh, the the change to a subscription was a really big pivot. Like it changes the incentive structure. It gives the company a business model. It's actually the change in business model, a lot changes because of that. And then we had a lot of experiments that we tried, but those aren't pivots because we never actually reoriented the company for them. And so we let the press say, "Oh, this is a pivot." Like I don't know, we had maybe 12 publications that could charge directly, charge subscribers directly. This is like 12 out of tens of thousands of publications. And then we shut it down, and someone called that a pivot. And it's like, no, that's just a failed experiment. And even the editorial work that we've done internally, again, very expensive, very, very expensive experiment. We never bet the company in that direction. And then I think you could say me coming here is a second pivot. Like I basically think that I'm executing on Ev's strategy. Like I had known it for a long time, and the whole time, like the last 5 years, I'd been thinking, wait, why is he not doing it the way that I would do it? But I think, I'm a very different manager than Ev is, and so because of that, a lot of things maybe on the surface, but I think deeper than that change. So like I'm in the comments. Ev was never in the comments, and
Comments are a rough place.
people are funny. It's like the roughest part of the comments is when I tell someone, I correct someone, like, "Hey, look, I know, right?" And then they tell me, "You're just here to correct people," and I'm like, well, do you not want me here? Like, do you not want the real information, or like, yes or no? Like, I don't have to give it to you. You seem like you're making decisions based on things that are just not true. For the most part, the comments are fine. But yeah, like how we operate, I think Ev was much more about big bets, and I'm much more about small bets that lead up to something big. Yeah, and I think probably the people at the company experience it as fairly fundamentally different. But other than that, we've never pivoted. So I'm a little tongue in cheek about it. And you're referencing an interview I did with Casey Newton where he said, I know he's accused us of pivoting. And I was like, well, I could either get really defensive or I could lean into it. I think leaning into it
that's what it seemed
worked.
like. You're using it very flippantly, and that's why I wanted
Yeah.
to clear it up, because I
Yeah.
know the whole interview was written kind of in I would say a fun, jovial sense. Like it seemed
Yeah,
like,
right.
but I was like, huh, this is interesting. I feel like if this was taken out of context and put on Medium, people would go insane. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm surprised I haven't seen anybody like put this in a headline salaciously yet.
Right. This is the quarterly pivot. No, I don't. We're not really doing anything that I wasn't planning to do, or I wasn't hoping we would do 5 years ago. I have I think, a fairly consistent view of the company. But I joke about it inside the company too. We have a all hands meeting, and my section is called "This Week in Pivots," and then I cover everything that changed, and so yeah, just continuing to lean into that.
Got it. So we started with productivity, and I kind of just want to finish with productivity while I have you here. So,
Sure.
just oh, I guess actually before that, just is there anything else? What's next for Medium? Before, is there anything maybe you just
Check the blog. I mean,
check the
this is
blog?
people like we try to put everything meaningful in the blog, and like sometimes you'll catch me talking about stuff early, but like it's only halfway thought out at that point. Like I'm talking to people to work it out, and much more efficient just to wait till we announce some stuff on our blog.
Okay,
We host our blog, by the way, on Medium, as everyone should.
it's a pretty solid website, if I
Yeah,
have to say so
yeah.
myself. But any book recommendations you have, or any practices? I've been meditating for a few months myself. That's
Mm,
initially why I actually reached out to you. 'Cause you came up
yeah.
somewhat randomly on a meditation podcast or website that I was in. I was like, oh, this is hilarious. So it might, I don't even know if it was centered around meditation, but your name was there, and I was like, oh, this is funny. So
Why did you, what's your goal with meditation?
at
Why
this
did you pick it up?
at this point, I'll say almost. I was born in a very religious household, and my parents aren't maybe as I was born in Oklahoma actually,
Yeah.
and my parents aren't like that. They're great people, but they're not as deeply devoutly religious now. But I loved the idea of prayer. Like I almost felt like it was an idea of
Yeah.
meditation. The problem when I would pray, I just didn't feel the connection with it. So I started meditating. I just wanted to kind of almost. I like the idea more of that, like almost like a dumbbell lift of okay, I've
Mm,
not thought of anything. I think I'm overthinking. It's almost like a decision fatigue every single day. Even when I'm going to bed at night, as a comedian, I'm thinking of like 100 different ideas to write about. I'm
yeah.
like, it's going to shut off my brain at some point during the day.
Right. Right. I mean, obviously, a lot of people come to it for calming. Like, hence the top meditation app is literally called Calm. But I had worked with people that were more pragmatic about it, and then I had then worked with a lot of people who didn't see the point of meditation until you showed it to them in a more pragmatic way. And so I had spent a while teaching meditation as like a performance practice. Like, you want to give a, you want to deliver a great set tonight, meditate, right? And even what you just said there about, okay, you've got all these ideas, but the thing you want to do is fall asleep, right? And right, that's about being able to perform the task at hand is really hard. We all know that's obvious. It's what procrastination takes it out of us, anxiety. Like, there's all of these ways in which we're not present in the thing we're trying to do right now. And there's a way to tackle that through meditation, to use meditation as the like the weightlifting session for your mind, where you're noticing where your mind went to and then practicing bringing it back to a point of focus. And usually that point of focus is your breath when you're doing meditation. But the reality is, you once you learn how to bring it to your breath, you could put it anywhere. Yeah.
Mm, okay. And any book recommendations?
Um, huh, do I? Um, I'm reading Neil Stephenson's book Fall, and it was sort of written in the Trump era, and a lot of it is about social media and kind of the future of tech, and there's a lot of parallels to what we see in the world right now.
Okay. Well, this
All
meeting
right,
is about to end. So, Tony, this has been amazing. I hope we can get a cup of coffee sometime after I
sure, one day,
have a set in Eastville. But this has been a
yeah,
pleasure meeting you, and I could talk to you for like for hours. But
yeah.
the meeting is set up for 40 minutes. So, okay, and that was the Tony Stubblebine interview. Apologies for cutting out abruptly there at the end. What happened was we had Tony scheduled for 40 minutes, and when we went over that time, it ended up cutting out on us. Won't happen again. Now we have make sure that we're going to have more than an hour scheduled. But I got a lot out of talking to Tony. A lot about his productivity. Um, fuck. And look forward to we're gonna have more episodes coming out every Wednesday now with other writers, not just on Medium, of course, other authors, other writers online. And we're gonna have those coming out every Wednesday. So an article on Monday, article on Friday, and episode on Wednesday. So thanks for subscribing. Really does mean a lot. And talk to you guys soon.